Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life Was Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within the communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities that he chose to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight on the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we will be discussing. So where did the Notre Dame Nuns serve in Holyoke?
The Notre Dame Nuns served at one place in Holyoke only, and that was the Immaculate Conception de Notre Dame School, usually called just the Notre Dame School. It's on Chestnut Street, and it was part of the St. Jerome's Church campus. They served there from 1869 to 1910. They had their own convent. The school and the convent are still in place. So we're going to talk about that convent along the way, and we're going to talk about where these nuns might be buried. And we're also going to talk about where the mother house for these Notre Dame nuns are. They're not common around Holyoke, but there's some in Chicopee. We'll describe that. And they are more common out in eastern Massachusetts, central Massachusetts. So we'll explain why they even bothered to come out here. But the first thing I want to say is they were in Chicopee in 1867. They started up the first Catholic school for girls ever in western Massachusetts at the Holy Name Church campus. The school had a convent right next to it, and they used that convent. So they were here in this area very early on, and we'll describe all these in detail.
And where was the Notre Dame convent?
The Notre Dame convent for the job that we're going to describe is right next to the school. So the Notre Dame convent is on Chestnut Street at the corner of Hampden Street. It's still there today. It was refurbished like 10 years ago, and it is still in use. Now, the Notre Dame nuns only used it from 1869 to 1910. At that point, after 41 years, they were displaced by the Sisters of St. Joseph. The reason why is that the pastor that came in wanted to have uniformity. Before, there were two sets of nuns, one teaching the boys and one teaching the girls. And that was because the Notre Dame nuns cannot teach boys. They can only teach girls. And they did just that at both the Chicopee location and the Holyoke location. And Chicopee, the convent was right next to that school. So the Holy Name School for Girls was almost attached. It was close to being attached, maybe about 5 yards apart. That's how close they were. So they were displaced, not in Chicopee, but they were displaced in Holyoke because they wanted a uniformity. And the nuns, Sister St. Joseph, took over the convent for the Sisters of Providence, and the convent, that was Notre Dame convent, then became part of the whole school system. It became the lower grades for the St. Jerome's School, which also was unified other than the new group of nuns. And the Notre Dame School itself became the location for the upper grades.
And really quick, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, to find out more information, or if you're interested in signing up for any of his personal tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, where are these Notre Dame nuns buried?
They are buried in the St. Jerome's Cemetery of Holyoke, Massachusetts, right next to the part that borders onto St. Jerome's Avenue. If you take the main strip and take the first left and take the first right, you're on an inner roadway, and on that inner roadway, you're going to see one stone about a third of the way up on the left. It says Sisters of Notre Dame, and there's maybe about 14 names on there. Now, that's the burial gravestone for these Sisters of Notre Dame. Now, in Chicopee, they're buried at the Calvary Cemetery, and there they have individual gravestones instead of one unified gravestone. And that's near the beautiful statue and crucifix that is in the front middle of that cemetery. Now, I've been informed this last year that it used to be a place on the campus of the Holy Name Church where not only two priests were buried, but also there were a few nuns buried there with gravestones. And they were moved when the convent and the school were taken down about 10 years ago. This is the year 2024. I have not been able to back up that story. It might be true, a few people have told me. Now, when I went to check the deaths of the oldest nuns that served there, they were buried in Calvary Cemetery. So if less policy was changed and they started being buried on school ground, I don't know if that story is absolutely true. It's hard to understand.
And where is the mother house for the Notre Dame nuns?
The mother house for the Notre Dame nuns, in this area there is none, but in Massachusetts there is the international level one for the Sisters of Notre Dame. And that's in Waltham, Massachusetts. I believe it's still being used, at least at a low level. And if you go to their history page, then you can read all about this wonderful group. And that history page is on my website under the History of Notre Dame Nuns. And it tells wonderful stories about all the locations that they served in. They served at the St. Patrick's Church in Lowell, for instance. That was one of the first locations. They served at the Immaculate Conception in Salem, and they also served in Roxbury, and they served at the old St. Mary's Church in Lawrence, at the Holy Name Convent School in Chicopee, which I told you already about, and then I told you about the one in Holyoke, of course. Then there was one in Worcester, Cambridge, and a lot more. There's so many that it's hard to list them all. But one important thing is they started up the Emmanuel College, which was the first Catholic school for girls in Massachusetts. So you can read about their wonderful history, figure out all the things they've done, and please visit their former convents, the convent that you can still visit in Holyoke, and the school you can visit in Holyoke, even though the ones in Chicopee are now gone, and also visit their grave sites and get to read about them. And you get a sense of all the things these nuns have done for the area. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And check out a large selection of our other podcasts at his website, as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new podcasts and videos posted daily. Thank you, and hope you join us again.